Hi everyone, and welcome to lesson 2 of the environment. Your starter task is to think of the 5 countries in each of these categories. So we're going to be talking about technology waste in this lesson. So I want you to think of the 5 most wasteful countries in the world that you can think of in terms of technology waste, and write those down from numbers 1 to 5, 1 being the most wasteful, 5 being the least wasteful out of the 5. I then want you to write the same list for the 5 top countries that you think are most impacted by technology waste across the world. Okay, so this should take you a good few minutes, so I'd like you to pause the video until you have both lists completed. So now you should have 2 lists, one with 5 countries that you think are the most wasteful in the world, and another list with the 5 countries that you think are most impacted, and we're going to go through those one by one just now. So I'll start with the most wasteful countries. Number 5 is the UK. Okay, so we are 5th in the world for the most wasteful country in terms of technology waste. So if you've got that right, give yourself a wee tick. If not, you can just change your answer, but keep your original one there just to see how it compares. So number 4 in the most wasteful technology is Denmark. The 3rd most wasteful country in the world in terms of technology waste is Iceland. The 2nd is Switzerland. And I wonder how many people got this correct. The number 1 most wasteful country in the world for technology waste is Norway, which I found quite surprising. Now, if we have a look at the most impacted countries, okay, number 5 is Nigeria. Number 4 is Pakistan. Number 3 is India. The 2nd most impacted country in terms of technology waste is Ghana. And the number 1 country that's most impacted by technology waste across the world is China. Okay, so you can again pause this video and update your lists so that you've got the correct most wasteful and most impacted countries written down. So in this week's lesson, what we're going to look at is the effects of technology waste. Okay, so we're going to learn what is technology waste, okay, but more so how does it affect the environment. Okay, so by the end of this lesson, you should be able to list the countries most affected by technology waste, which if you've completed the starter task, you will have already achieved. You'll be able to explain why these countries are being impacted. And then finally, you'll be able to understand the impact that this cycle of waste has on Earth and has on our environment. Okay? So what we're going to do is watch a quick video. It's about 5 minutes long. So just keep your ears open and listen to all of the information that's being shared in this video. And I'll come back just after with the task that we're going to do this week.
This is the dark side of our electronic way of life. Televisions and computers discarded by the million, victims of our culture of the upgrade. But while these units are soon forgotten, the hazardous metals inside them remain as toxic as ever, and the volume just keeps rising. Meet the new waste mountain, electronics, no longer as shiny as they were in the showroom, now chucked onto the scrap heap. The numbers involved in this are staggering. This is a tiny fraction of a growing and global problem. According to the UN Environment Programme, the world throws out up to 50 million tonnes of electronic waste every year. In the same period, British households alone discard 93 million old electronic items. And in America, 500 million PCs will have become obsolete by next year, according to official figures. This is what's supposed to happen, everything dismantled safely. Here at this new recycling plant in Teesside, the old electronics are broken up and the poisonous components extracted. But most electronic waste isn't handled this carefully. It ends up in landfill, or it's smuggled abroad to be picked apart by unprotected hands.
It's absolutely paramount that this product is handled appropriately, it's broken down appropriately, and similarly it doesn't go into landfill, or with probably some less scrupulous cases actually going overseas to the sort of situation where you may have in China, for example, with products being handled without any protective equipment.
In the last few days, this container was impounded at Southampton docks on its way to China. Inside, illegal waste. Not electronic this time, but all too often it is. And to face this growing threat, there's a rush to train new inspectors. Shipments of smuggled electronic waste are suddenly increasing.
There's likely to be more of these that are coming through our ports in the UK. We want to have a bigger group of people carrying out inspections to detect these shipments, and that's why we're training up to 50 people over the next 2 months to carry out that work.
But the challenge is huge. We usually think of containers bringing us cheap electronics from Asia. But there's a more sinister trade the other way as well.
There's a good chance that this is where your old computer or printer or mobile phone is going to end up, dumped beside a river here in southern China. I'm just outside the town of Guiyu, which is just over there beyond the fields. And Guiyu is the world centre for a huge and lucrative trade in reprocessing electronic waste. China actually completely banned the importation of any electronic waste from anywhere else in the world. But as you'll see in a minute when we go into Guiyu, that's done absolutely nothing to stop the flow of a vast quantity of waste from all over the world ending up here.
The streets of Guiyu are piled high with it. In every side street and alleyway, fresh lorry loads were being unloaded. For less than £2 a day, the workers here tear the computers apart by hand. Dismantling computers like this is not illegal, but because the waste is smuggled into China, people are scared of talking about what goes on here. Eventually, we found one scrap dealer. His face has been hidden for his own safety. Stuff from Europe arrives here every day, he tells me. In Europe, it would cost too much to recycle this stuff. It just gets thrown away. But here, we can reclaim everything. All the copper, the aluminium, even the gold. He's right, but at what cost? With a secret camera, we managed to film these workers recycling circuit boards. They're melted over a stove. The fumes are thick with lead, which causes brain damage. What's left is then dumped beside the river. Soil tests here have shown lead levels 200 times the safe limit. At night, it's all set fire to, filling the air with deadly dioxins.
Every year, the world throws away an ever-increasing amount of electronic junk. On average, we now change our mobile phones every 18 months, our computers every 3 to 4 years. Most of us give little or no thought at all about what happens to it once it's gone. But without much greater efforts by governments, manufacturers, and by consumers, it's going to continue ending up like this, a burning toxic heap in somebody else's backyard. Rupert Wingfield-Hayes, BBC News, in Guiyu, southern China.
Okay, everyone, so some really interesting information there. It just goes to show where our technology waste actually ends up a majority of the time. So what I've done is I've compiled a task for you to complete this week, and I've attached videos similar to the one that we've just watched on this homework notification. So what I would like you to do is choose one of the videos. So there's China, Ghana, Pakistan, or India that you can choose from. And as you watch that video, you may wish to take some notes on important bits of information that you learn. So just like the video we just watched there, it said that when the circuit boards are melted down, there's loads of toxic fumes that include lead being released into the atmosphere. That's a really good point to make in your notes, okay? So think of some really important bits that you find in that video and just jot them down on the piece of paper that you wrote your lists on for the starter, okay? So the notes that you take down may include what happens in the country with the technology waste. Where does the waste actually come from? What other countries does it come from, or how does it get there? Where does the waste end up in that country? So just like in China there, it ended up by the side of the river. Okay. Why does this have an impact on the health of people who live there in that environment? What do the locals do with the waste? Okay, and what is the health impact of this? So just like in China, where there's some people employed to recycle the technology waste, and yes, it may give them a job, but also the health impact of that, the lead and the fumes from the technology waste can actually cause severe brain damage. Okay, so we're thinking about the health impact on the locals. And then how are they trying to combat the problem? Now, when I say they, I'm talking more about the countries and the governments and the tech companies who are creating this waste. Okay, what are they doing to try and address that problem and make it better for everyone involved? So you should have quite a few notes written down from the video that you choose. Any additional information that you learn that you may find interesting, you can pop that down on your notes as well. So now that you've done that, what I would like you to do is to make a poster on your findings. Okay, so with your page of notes, you should create a poster and it should include the following information. What happens in the country? Where does it come from? Where does the waste end up? Why does this impact on the health of people? What do the locals do with the waste? How are they trying to combat the problem? And then any additional information that you've learned. So I would quite like an A4 poster created. If you just either draw it on a piece of paper or use Microsoft Word to properly edit your poster, that would be really good as well. I then have attached an extension task, and that is to create an animation on the medium of your choice which demonstrates the process the computer goes through from being thrown in the bin by us to ending up where it did in your video. Okay, so what I would like you to do is really understand the technology waste cycle for the chosen country that you've picked and watched the video on. And I would like you to create an animation. So maybe, for example, you could use Scratch if you're familiar with that, to animate the process of maybe you throwing your mobile phone in the bin. What actually happens? It travels from your home to landfill. It then gets processed, maybe sent to a handling company, and then they ship it elsewhere in the world. When it gets to China, for example, it may then be processed by locals who live there, melted down, all the parts taken out. I want to see if you can try and create an animation of the journey of a piece of technology to where it ends up. Okay, so that's the waste cycle for that. You can also use Microsoft PowerPoint to create the animation as well. Okay, so there's the extension task again, and just for you to read. So the end of this lesson, basically what you should have is a poster about the technology waste for that specific country, and then also an animation. So as I say, it could be Microsoft PowerPoint or Scratch or anything that you use to create some animations on. Okay, so it's just the journey of technology from when it is disposed of to where it ends up in waste. So by the end of this video then, you can judge how successful you have been. So if you can list the countries that are most affected by technology waste, if you can explain why these countries are being impacted, okay, so what's causing the countries to be impacted in terms of technology waste, and also if you can understand the impact that this cycle of waste has on Earth and the environment. Okay, if you've managed to meet those criteria, I would say give yourself 5 stars, but just take a wee note of how confident you feel with this specific lesson, okay, and let me know in the notification comments if there's anything else that you would like to know about this lesson, or if there's anything that you're struggling with. Okay, but just to remind you, I would like a poster attached to this submission, and also if you're able to create a animation of technology waste and the cycle